A key witness during the early stage of the hearings was Harold S. Bride. Bride was the only surviving Marconi operator from the Titanic. Marconi himself, the Italian electrical engineer and pioneer of the wireless telegraph, would later be called to testify as one of the expert witnesses.
What is your full name?
Harold S. Bride.
Where do you reside?
London.
What is your age?
22.
What is your occupation?
Wireless telegraph operator, sir.
In whose employ were you on the 10th day of April?
The Marconi Company, sir.
In what capacity?
Second operator on the Titanic.
What wage did you receive?
£4 a month.
Who was your chief?
Mr. Phillips.
Now, I wish you would describe, as near as you can, the wireless apparatus with which the Titanic was equipped.
It was a 5 kilowatt. The discharger fitted with magnetic detector and valve and receiver and emergency gears.
Would you call it a thoroughly up-to-date apparatus?
Yes, sir.
How far could you communicate with that apparatus?
During the daytime, we reckoned to be able to do 400 miles.
Did you have occasion to use this wireless frequently after leaving Southampton?
Very frequently, sir.
I wish you would let us know, if you can, how busy you were kept at that work.
From leaving Southampton to the time we had finished with Cape Race, we got through about 250 telegrams. That was the evening we struck.
Were any officers of the White Star Line aboard the Titanic?
We had heard that Mr. Ismay was on board, but beyond that I do not know anything.
You knew who he was?
Yes, sir.
Did he send or receive messages through you during the voyage?
I believe there were some transmitted for him, sir.
Official messages?
They would rank with us as official messages.
Did they deal with the direction or speed of the ship?
Coming from Belfast, there were messages transmitted from Mr. Ismay regarding the speed of the ship.
To whom were they sent, do you remember?
They were sent to the White Star officers at Liverpool and Southampton.
Can you recall what was contained in the messages?
Generally, sir, that the trials of the speed of the ship were very favourable.
Can you recall whether the captain of the ship received any messages on Saturday or Sunday from any White Star official regarding the movement, direction, or speed of the ship?
No, sir, he did not.
Were you on duty when the wireless message was received from the America regarding the proximity of icebergs in that longitude?
I have no knowledge of a wireless message received from the America regarding any iceberg. There may have been one received by Mr. Phillips, but I did not see one myself.
Did you ever talk to the captain regarding such a message?
There was a message delivered to the captain in the afternoon, sir, late in the afternoon, regarding the ice field.
From whom?
From the California, sir. I received that message and delivered it to the captain. It stated that there were 3 icebergs that the ship had just passed, and it gave their position.
Now, I would like to know what that message said.
In the first place, the California had called me with an ice report. I was rather busy just for the minute, and I did not take it. She did not call again. She transmitted the ice report to the Baltic, and as she was transmitting it to the Baltic, I took it down. I took it to the captain, but it was not official, because it was not intended for me afterwards.
Was the attempt made first upon you?
First on me, yes, sir.
Why were they unable to get you?
I was doing some writing at the time.
Did you have the instrument off your head at the time?
No, sir.
You were aware that the California was trying to get you?
Yes, sir.
Were you in bed when the collision occurred?
Yes, sir.
Were you awakened?
No, sir.
How were you awakened?
I woke up on my own accord.
This was after the collision?
After the collision.
During that time, did Mr. Phillips tell you that the boat had been injured?
He told me that he thought she had been damaged in some way and that he expected that we should have to go back to Harlan and Wolf's.
Those were the builders at Belfast?
Yes.
What did you do then?
I took over the watch.
Where did he go?
He was going to retire, sir. He got inside of the other room when the captain came in.
What did the captain say?
He told us that we'd better get assistance.
Was the message sent out immediately?
Yes.
Please state it.
CQD about half a dozen times. MGY half a dozen times.
Will you kindly explain the meaning of these letters or code?
CQD is a recognised distress call. MGY is the code call of the Titanic.
How long after that call was sent out was it before you got a reply?
As far as I know, immediately, sir.
You received a reply within 3 or 4 minutes but you only knew from what...
Mr. Phillips told me.
Just what did he tell you?
He told me to go to the captain and report the Frankfurt.
Was the Frankfurt the first ship that picked up the CQD?
Yes, sir.
And you delivered that message to the captain?
Yes, sir.
What did he say when you handed him this message?
He wanted to know where she was. I told him we would get that as soon as we could.
What did you do then?
I went back to the cabin with Mr. Phillips.
What was the next message received by Mr. Phillips?
A reply from the Carpathia.
What did the Carpathia message say?
She sent her latitude and longitude and told him she was coming along as quickly as possible. She turned around and was steaming full speed, or words to that effect.
What was done with this message?
I took it to the captain.
What did the captain say when you delivered that message?
He came back with me to the cabin.
What took place?
Why, he worked out the difference between the Carpathia's position and ours, sir.
I understand from you that the first response to the CQD call of distress was from the Frankfurt. What line of boats?
German line, as far as I can remember.
Did you receive any other communication from the Frankfurt?
Not then, sir. We had transmitted to the Frankfurt our position, but we had received nothing from him in return. He told us to stand by, sir. That means wait.
Did anyone say in your hearing that they thought the Frankfurt was in closer proximity to the Titanic than any other ship?
Mr. Phillips told me that, judging by the strength of the signals received from the two ships, the Frankfurt was nearer.
Did you have any other communication with the Frankfurt after the ship responded to the distress call?
Yes, sir. He called up at a considerably long period afterwards and asked us what was the matter.
How long after?
I should say that it would be considerably over 20 minutes afterwards.
To that message, what did you say?
I think Mr. Phillips responded rather hurriedly.
What did he say? I would like to know.
Well, he told him he was a fool, sir.
Is that all?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Phillips tell him what was the matter?
No, sir. He told him to stand by. So, finish.
In the interim, you had gotten into communication with the Carpathia.
And the Olympic.
Both of whom assured you they were coming to your relief?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever learn the position of the Frankfurt?
No, sir.
Did you and Mr. Phillips talk about it?
Yes, sir. We expressed our opinions to the operator on the Frankfurt.
Was it critical and uncomplimentary?
Very.
Was it based on any knowledge or suspicion that the operator was personally derelict in his duty?
Yes, sir.
But you realized at the time that all the lives on that ship depended upon getting relief from some other vessel?
Yes, sir.
After you told him he was a fool, did you tell him the ship was going down?
No, sir. We told him to stand by, sir, to keep out of it, not to interfere with the instrument, because we were in communication with the Carpathia, and we knew that the Carpathia was the best thing doing.
Did you give him any additional information?
No, sir. He ought not to have wanted any in the first place.
Mr. Bride, I want this record to be as complete as possible, and I desire to know why, after a message was received from the Frankfurt saying, "What is the matter?" you did not reply, "We are sinking and the lives of our passengers and crew are in danger."
You see, it takes a certain amount of time to transmit that information, sir. If the man had understood properly, as he ought to have, CQD would have been sufficient, sir. CQD is the whole thing in a nutshell, you see.
But in an emergency, do you not think that a more detailed statement might have been sent? Take, for instance, the message from the Titanic to the Carpathia that the boiler rooms were filling with water, the ship was sinking. That could have been sent out with perfect propriety to a boat that was in proximity, could it not?
You use your common sense, and the man on the Frankfurt apparently was not using his at the time.
In other words, you held on to a certainty rather than an uncertainty?
Yes, sir.
In that situation, if the Frankfurt had been 20 miles nearer the Titanic than the Carpathia, would you still have thought, from what you knew of the ship's condition, that it was wise to confine your communications to the Carpathia?
Had we known the Frankfurt's position, having already got the Carpathia's position, we should have used our judgment, and had the Frankfurt been any reasonable distance nearer, we should have informed the Frankfurt of the whole business and repeated each word we sent to him about a dozen times to make sure he got it.
I want to know whether the communications between the Titanic and the Carpathia were not also within the radius of the Frankfurt. I would like to know whether these communications could have been picked up by the Frankfurt.
Certainly. You ought to have heard every word that passed between us.
When you told him to keep out, you were guarding against that thing? How could it interfere with you?
Because you cannot read two ships at once.
I would like to know whether it would have taken any longer or any more effort for you to have sent the same message to the Frankfurt that was sent to the Carpathia when you realized you were in imminent danger. Is there any code signal for fool?
No, sir.
As a matter of fact, it would not have taken any more time to say we are sinking than it would to have told him you are a fool.
I assume Mr. Phillips thought that if he did not get our first CQD, which was sent slowly and carefully by Mr. Phillips, he would not get anything else.
Do you think he understood your message that he was a fool?
I doubt it. I think it was too fast for him.
Did you continue to send messages, or Mr. Phillips, up to the time you left the cabin?
When we had finished with the Frankfurt, and we had thoroughly informed the Carpathia of our position, Mr. Phillips again went out to look and see how things were going outside. I tried to establish a communication with the Baltic, and it was not very satisfactory. And I judged myself from the strength of her signal that she was too far away to do any good, and it was not worth taking any trouble. And I told her we were sinking fast and there was no hope of saving the ship.
What did you do then, Mr. Bride?
On Mr. Phillips' request, I started to gather up his spare money and put on another overcoat, made general preparations for leaving the ship.
You waited until the captain told you that you could leave the ship?
Yes, sir.
How long before the ship disappeared?
I should say it was just about a quarter of an hour.
You had on life belts, and after the final message, that was the last you saw of the wireless apparatus?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any lifeboats after that?
There were no big lifeboats on the ship at the time. There was a collapsible boat on the top deck of the side of the forward funnel.
What was done with it?
It was pushed over on the boat deck.
You never saw it?
Yes, sir. It went over the side of the ship. It was washed off by a wave.
Bottom side upward?
Yes, sir.
And how far were you from the water when you saw this boat fall?
I was in the boat.
You were in the boat?
Yes, sir.
It fell the bottom side upward?
Yes, sir.
What became of you?
I was inside the boat.
You were under the boat?
Yes.
How long did you remain in the boat?
It seemed a lifetime to me, really.
I understand, but I would like to know, if possible, if at any time you got on top of the boat.
I got on top of the boat eventually.
Eventually?
Yes, sir.
Before anyone else got on top of it?
No, sir.
Who was on top of the boat when you got on?
There was a big crowd on top when I got on. I had to get away from under the bottom.
You remained under the boat how long?
I should say about 3/4 of an hour.
Was there breathing space under the boat when it was turned over in that way?
Yes, sir.
So that you got away from it as quickly as you could?
Yes, sir.
You got out free from it, or did you cling to it, pulling yourself up to the side?
I freed myself from it and cleared out of it.
How did you get back on it then?
Swam back, eventually.
Which side of the boat were you on, port or starboard?
On the port side of the Titanic.
Did you hear the second officer yesterday say that the boat came around from the starboard to the port side?
I was not here yesterday.
You could not say as to that.
It went straight over the port side, sir.
It went straight over the port side?
It was on the port side of the forward funnel. We pushed it on the port side of the boat deck, and it went over the port side of the Titanic.
Did it at any time get on the starboard side?
Not to my knowledge.
You say there was a number of people on the boat. On the bottom of the boat that was bottom up when you got there?
Yes.
Do you know any of them?
I heard afterwards that the senior operator was on board.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes, I heard so afterwards.
He did not survive, however.
He did not survive.
Do you know whether he died going from the Titanic to the Carpathia?
He died on the way, yes. He died on board the upturned boat.
What became of his body?
As far as I know, it was taken on board the Carpathia and buried from the Carpathia.
Buried at sea?
Buried from the Carpathia.
Did anyone else die on that boat between the wreck and the Carpathia?
There was a man lying aft that they said was dead when they took him onto the ship's boat.
What did they do with that body?
He was taken on board the Carpathia, as far as I know.
When did you last see the captain? When he told you to take care of yourself?
The last time I saw the captain, he went overboard from the bridge, sir.
Did you see the Titanic sink?
Yes, sir.
And the captain was, at that time, on the bridge?
No, sir.
What do you mean by overboard?
He jumped overboard from the bridge. He jumped overboard from the bridge when we were all launching the collapsible lifeboat.
I should judge from what you said that this was about 3 or 4 minutes before the boat sank?
Yes. It would be just about 5 minutes before the boat sank.
About 5 minutes.
Yes.
Do you know whether the captain had a life belt on?
He had not when I last saw him.
He had not.
No, sir.
Did the bridge go underwater at about the same time?
Yes, sir. The whole of the ship was practically underwater to the forward funnel. And when I saw her go down, the stern came out of the water and she slid down fore and aft.
The captain at no time went over until the vessel sank.
No, sir.
He went with the vessel.
Practically speaking, yes, sir.
I would like to ask you, before I forget it, whether as this vessel went down there was much suction there?
No, sir.
The fact that so few of the passengers and crew were picked up by the Carpathia with life preservers on would seem to indicate that they were sucked under these waves or this water as the ship disappeared. What is your judgment about that?
I estimate I was within 150 feet of the Titanic. I was swimming when she went down, and I felt practically no suction at all.